Alright, let's talk about India. This place is like a Bollywood movie. Colorful, chaotic, and full of potential. You've got the Taj Mahal, a monument so romantic it could make a statue blush. Then you've got Mumbai, a city that never sleeps. And don't even get me started on the food. Seriously, if you're ever feeling adventurous, just order a vindaloo. But be warned, you might need a fire extinguisher for your tongue afterward. India isn't just a land of contrasts. It's a land of serious ambition. It's already the world's 5th largest economy with a population set to overtake China. They're part of the G20 and have a seat at the UN. But can India really become the next global superpower? It's one thing to have ambition, it's another to achieve it. Over the next few minutes, we'll dive into the heart of India. We'll examine the forces propelling its rise and the challenges holding it back. So buckle up, grab a samosa, and let's get into it. Now, if there's one thing India has in abundance, it's people. And I'm not just talking about sheer numbers here though, with over 1.4 billion people, they're hardly lacking in that department. I'm talking about young people, the lifeblood of any aspiring superpower. Imagine a country where over half the population is under the age of 25. That's India, a nation brimming with youthful energy, brimming with potential. And let's be honest, probably brimming with hormones too. This, my friends, is what economists call a demographic dividend. It's like winning the lottery, but instead of a giant check, you get a massive workforce, eager consumers, and a dynamism that's hard to replicate. Think about it, when you've got a young population, you've got a built-in market for everything from smartphones to motorcycles, from clothes to, well, let's just say dating apps. And with more people entering the workforce than leaving it, the potential for economic growth is enormous. It's like having a rocket fueled by youthful exuberance just waiting for the right moment to blast off. Now, for years people have been talking about India's economic potential, using that tired old metaphor of an elephant slowly waking up. Well, guess what? The elephant is awake, and it's hungry. India is now one of the fastest growing major economies in the world, leaving behind those lumbering giants in Europe. They're on track to become the world's 3rd largest economy by 2030, overtaking Japan and giving China a run for its money. And it's not just about cheap labor anymore. India is rapidly becoming a hub for innovation, a global player in sectors like pharmaceuticals, IT, and renewable energy. We're talking about companies like Tata, a conglomerate so vast it makes Amazon look like a mom-and-pop shop. We're talking about Infosys, an IT giant that's become synonymous with Indian tech prowess. And we're talking about Reliance Industries, a behemoth with tentacles in everything from oil and gas to telecom and retail. These aren't just Indian companies, they're global powerhouses competing and winning on the world stage, and they're just the tip of the iceberg, because beneath the surface, a whole new generation of Indian companies is emerging ready to take on the world. Alright, let's talk tech, because if there's one thing India's known for besides, an abundance of spices and a history that dates back millennia, it's their prowess in IT. We're talking a country that produces more engineering graduates than the US and China combined. That's right, combined. Now you might be picturing a nation glued to call center headsets, troubleshooting printer issues for frustrated Americans. And while that image isn't entirely inaccurate, hey, we've all been there. It's about as outdated as thinking Britain still runs on tea and colonialism. India's gone from outsourcing hub to a hotbed of innovation, with Bangalore leading the charge. They call it the Indian Silicon Valley, and frankly it's earned the moniker. We're talking a city teeming with startups, venture capitalists throwing money at anything with a decent algorithm, and a workforce that can code circles around your nephew who just discovered Python. This isn't just about churning out lines of code, it's about creating solutions, disrupting industries, and building global tech giants. And trust me, they're well on their way. Now, you might not be familiar with all the names coming out of India's tech scene just yet, but I guarantee you will be. Take Flipkart for instance. Imagine Amazon, but with a distinctly Indian flavor, like if your delivery driver also brought you a side of samosas. And then there's Zomato, the food delivery app that's basically conquered the subcontinent one biryani order at a time. These companies aren't just local heroes, they're attracting major international investment and expanding globally faster than you can say venture capital. But it's not just about the big names. India's innovation ecosystem is thriving with incubators, accelerators, and a government increasingly keen on fostering homegrown tech talent. They've even got their own space program, which, let's be honest, is just objectively cool. So, the next time you order takeout, book a cab, or even just browse the internet, remember, there's a good chance some brilliant minds in India helped make that happen, and they're just getting started. Alright, let's talk soft power, that nebulous concept of influencing the world not through military might or economic dominance but through sheer cultural coolness. And trust me, India's got coolness in spades. We're talking a country that gave the world Bollywood, a cinematic universe so vibrant, so over-the-top, so unapologetically joyous, that it makes Hollywood musicals look like a bunch of accountants having a sad sing-along in a spreadsheet. But it's not just about the movies. India's cultural influence is everywhere, from yoga studios popping up faster than Starbucks in every major city, to the global obsession with Indian cuisine. Because let's face it, who doesn't love a good curry? Seriously, I could eat my weight in naan and butter chicken. And let's not forget music. From the infectious beats of Bhangra to the soulful melodies of classical Indian music, there's a rhythm for every mood. And don't even get me started on the fashion. The colors, the fabrics, the sheer artistry, it's enough to make even the most jaded fashionista weep with envy. Now, a lot of this cultural influence can be attributed to India's massive diaspora, those intrepid souls who ventured out into the world, carrying their traditions, their spices, and yes, their Bollywood DVDs with them. We're talking doctors, engineers, entrepreneurs, and everyone in between, who've made their mark on every corner of the globe, from the bustling streets of London to the tech hubs of Silicon Valley. And they brought their culture with them, enriching the tapestry of their adopted homes. Look at the UK, for example, where chicken tikka masala is practically a national dish. Or Canada with its vibrant Indo-Canadian communities and politicians rocking the occasional kurta. And don't even get me started on the US, where Diwali celebrations are becoming as commonplace as pumpkin spice lattes in the fall. This isn't just cultural exchange, it's cultural fusion, a beautiful blend of traditions, flavors, and ideas. And it's a testament to the enduring power of Indian culture to captivate, inspire, and dare I say, make the world a slightly more delicious place. Now let's talk geopolitics, because let's face it, in the grand chessboard of international relations, geography is everything. And India, my friends, is sitting on a geopolitical goldmine. We're talking a country strategically located at the crossroads of the Indian Ocean, that massive body of water that handles a frankly absurd amount of global trade. Seriously, if the Indian Ocean were a stock, you'd be crazy not to invest. But it's not just about location, location, location. India also boasts a coastline that stretches over 7,500 kilometers, dotted with ports that are becoming increasingly vital for global commerce. And with China flexing its muscles in the region, having a strong, stable India as a counterbalance is, well, let's just say it's in everyone's best interest. This isn't about picking sides. It's about recognizing that a multipolar world, where power is distributed more evenly, is a safer, more prosperous world for everyone. And India, with its strategic location, its growing economy, and its commitment to democracy, is uniquely positioned to play a leading role in shaping that world. Now, you don't become a major player on the world stage without making a few friends, and India's been busy cultivating some pretty powerful alliances. We're talking about partnerships with countries like the US, Japan, and Australia, all united by a shared interest in a free and open Indo-Pacific region. You might have heard of the Quad, this informal strategic dialogue between these four democracies. Now, it's not a formal military alliance, but it's definitely got China a little bit nervous. And honestly, anything that makes an authoritarian regime slightly uncomfortable is probably a good thing. But it's not just about containing China. India's also been strengthening ties with countries in Southeast Asia, Central Asia, and Africa, building economic and diplomatic bridges across the globe. They're even reaching out to old rivals like Pakistan, because let's face it, Even sworn enemies can bond over a shared love of cricket and a mutual desire for peace. So, whether it's through strategic partnerships, economic clout, or simply by being a beacon of democracy in a region increasingly dominated by authoritarianism, India is making its presence felt on the world stage, and that, my friends, is a very good thing. So, we've spent the last few chapters marveling at India's meteoric rise, haven't we? The booming tech sector, the global cultural influence, the strategic alliances. But hold your horses, Richard Branson. Before we crown India the next global superpower, there's a rather large, rather uncomfortable elephant in the room we need to address. I'm talking, of course, about the stark inequality that still plagues this nation of 1.4 billion. While India boasts a burgeoning middle class and a handful of billionaires, it's also home to millions living in abject poverty. People struggling to access basic necessities like clean water, sanitation, and healthcare. So, while India's economic achievements are impressive, let's not forget about the millions still struggling. Now, some might argue that inequality is just an unfortunate side effect of rapid economic growth. But addressing inequality isn't just a moral imperative, it's essential for sustainable growth. When a huge chunk of your population is stuck in poverty, it drags the entire economy. Less disposable income means less demand for goods and services. It's a vicious cycle. Breaking that cycle requires economic empowerment and social upliftment. Investing in quality education and healthcare for all. Creating decent jobs that pay a living wage. Empowering marginalized communities. It's a tall order, but necessary for India to claim its place as a global superpower. A superpower built on the backs of the poor is a house of cards waiting to collapse. Millions of Indians deserve a shot at a brighter future. Alright, let's talk infrastructure, shall we? Because when you're aiming for global superpower status, you kind of need the logistical backbone to support those ambitions. You can't exactly project power on the world stage if your roads are crumbling, your airports are stuck in the 1970s, and your power grid goes down every time someone turns on a hairdryer. And let's just say, India's infrastructure situation is complicated. On the one hand, you've got gleaming new airports popping up in major cities, high-speed rail projects connecting urban centers, and ambitious plans for renewable energy. It's enough to make you think India is about to leapfrog straight into the 22nd century. But then, you venture beyond the polished facades of the big cities and things get a little, how shall we say, rustic. We're talking pothole-ridden highways that would make a monster truck rally driver break a sweat. We're talking about unreliable power grids that leave entire villages in darkness. And don't even get me started on the sanitation situation in some areas. Let's just say, open defecation is not a phrase you want associated with your aspiring superpower. Addressing India's infrastructure deficit is like performing open-heart surgery on a marathon runner, a massive undertaking requiring a delicate touch and stamina. The Indian government has made strides with ambitious infrastructure programs, upgrading transportation networks and embracing digital technologies. But progress is slow, bogged down by bureaucratic hurdles and corruption. This lack of infrastructure impedes economic growth. Businesses need reliable power and efficient networks to thrive. While India's journey is far from over, there are glimmers of hope. Maybe one day, new infrastructure will symbolize a nation bridging the gap between potential and reality. Now let's talk about what is arguably India's greatest asset in its quest for superpowerdom, its people. Specifically, its young people. Because while many developed nations are grappling with aging populations and shrinking workforces, India is sitting on a demographic goldmine. By 2023, India is projected to have the world's largest workforce, with a median age of just 28 years old. That's right, 28. Meanwhile, over in the good old US of A, the median age is closer to pushing 40. This youthful population, brimming with energy, ambition, and an alarmingly high tolerance for spicy food, has the potential to propel India's economic growth for decades to come. But, and this is a rather large, but only if India can equip its young people with the skills and education they need to succeed, in the 21st century economy. Because let's be honest, a large, unskilled workforce is less of an asset and more of a liability. It's like having a Ferrari but only knowing how to drive it in first gear. You're not exactly maximizing your potential. India's education system has long emphasized rote learning over critical thinking. This produces graduates ill-equipped for modern workplaces. Imagine knowing HTML by heart but not how to build a website. Impressive, but not what employers need. Thankfully, India is recognizing the need for change. Initiatives are promoting vocational training and digital skills. It's like upgrading an old Ferrari. Results could be spectacular. Investing in education empowers individuals and boosts growth. It gives every young Indian a chance to reach their potential. Maybe one day India's classrooms will produce global innovators. Alright, let's address the elephant in the room, or should I say the elephant on the subcontinent. Because India, despite all its potential, has a bit of a corruption problem. And I'm not talking about a little bit of harmless bribery here and there, like slipping a few rupees to the cable guy to accidentally upgrade your package. We're talking systemic, ingrained corruption that's about as subtle as a Bollywood dance number in a library. It's the kind of corruption that sees public funds meant for schools or hospitals mysteriously vanish, only to reappear as a new wing on a politician's summer home. See, corruption is like a termite infestation. It eats away at the very foundations of a nation, undermining trust in government and deterring foreign investment. And India, unfortunately, has been battling these bureaucratic termites for decades. Now, it's not like the Indian government is completely oblivious to this issue. They've made attempts to tackle it, like the Goods and Services Tax, GST, which aimed to simplify a ridiculously convoluted tax system that practically begged for loopholes. But it's a bit like trying to put out a dumpster fire with a squirt gun. There's still a long way to go. One potentially promising development is India's push towards digitalization. Think of it as their attempt to leapfrog over traditional bureaucratic hurdles, like trying to pay your taxes online instead of queuing for hours with a stack of forms taller than a stack of naan bread. And there have been some successes. Remember demonetization? That time when the Indian government decided to just casually invalidate 86% of its currency overnight? No? Well, it happened. And while it caused chaos of epic proportions, it did force more people and businesses into the digital realm. But here's the thing about digitalization. It's only as good as the system it operates within. It's like giving a shiny new paint job to a car that's about to fall apart. You might be impressed for a hot minute, but eventually, you're going to be left stranded on the side of the road. So, while India's efforts to digitize are commendable, they need to be accompanied by genuine efforts to root out corruption at its core. Otherwise, it's just rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic, except the Titanic is shaped like a giant samosa. Now, one of India's greatest strengths is its incredible diversity. It's a melting pot of cultures, languages, religions, and dance moves that would make your head spin faster than a Bollywood choreographer on Red Bull. But, and this is a big but, this diversity can also be a source of tension and division. We're talking religious differences, caste systems that have been around for centuries, and regional conflicts that make Brexit look like a playground squabble. And, all too often, these divisions are exploited by cynical politicians looking to score points and grab power. It's like a family Thanksgiving dinner where everyone's arguing about politics. Except instead of passive-aggressive comments about your aunt's casserole, you've got actual, violence and discrimination. And nobody wants to deal with that, especially not on an empty stomach. So for India to truly thrive, it needs to find a way to bridge these divides and foster a sense of unity, because a house divided against itself cannot stand, unless, of course, it's built by a really good Indian architect. And even then, it's probably best not to test that theory. Now, I'm not naive enough to think that centuries-old tensions can be resolved with a catchy jingle and a Bollywood dance routine. But India has a history of overcoming seemingly insurmountable challenges. They won their independence from the British Empire, for crying out loud, and did it with non-violent resistance led by a man who basically lived on lentils and willpower. So, if they can do that, Surely they can find a way to address these internal divisions. It's about promoting tolerance, understanding, and respect for all communities. It's about ensuring equal opportunities and access to resources, regardless of someone's religion, caste, or regional background. Look, a nation divided is a nation weakened. It's like trying to win a cricket match with half your team refusing to play because they don't like the color of the other half's uniforms. It's just not going to end well. India needs to remember that its true strength lies in its unity. Because when Indians stand together, they can achieve anything. Except maybe agreeing on whether dosa is better with sambar or chutney. That's a debate that could rage on until the end of time. So, can India become the next global superpower? Well, as we've seen, it's complicated. India is a land of contradictions, of immense potential and daunting challenges. It's a nation bursting with youthful energy, a booming tech sector, and a cultural influence that stretches across the globe. But it's also a country grappling with poverty, inequality, corruption, and social divisions. It's like a high-speed train running on tracks, held together with duct tape and hope, capable of incredible speed, but always on the verge of derailing. India's future as a superpower hinges on its ability to address these challenges head-on. It needs to invest in its people, its infrastructure, and its institutions. It needs to root out corruption and promote unity. If it can do all that, then India's future will be brighter than a Diwali celebration. But here's the thing. India's story isn't being written in some dusty history book. It's being written right now by the 1.4 billion people who call it home. And that includes you. What do you think? What does India need to do to achieve its full potential? Let us know in the comments below.